Okay, we're going to get started. We have some people still joining us. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Melissa Devlin, and I'm the Assistant Director at the Grandfamilies and Kinship Support Network at Generations United. And we are thrilled to have our subject matter experts from the Food Research and Action Center joining us today. Erin Hysom is the Senior Child Nutrition Policy Analyst at FRAC. And Susan Boudin is our also one of our subject matter experts joining us today as well. And as all of you know, food is always a challenge for families, especially kinship families who unexpectedly all of a sudden have children that they have to feed. And, especially for families that are on fixed incomes, it becomes very challenging to be able to make sure that they have enough food for the family. And there are, thank goodness, there's a number of programs across the country, but more specifically, today we'll be talking more about some of the federal nutrition programs. And there are opportunities for families, but, there's also always challenges to funding. It seems like an uphill battle, but fortunately, we have people like Erin and Susan here who are advocating for nutrition and food nutrition programs for all families. And today we're going to be speaking more specifically to the targeted needs of kinship families and grandfamilies. So this is not a webinar. We have it designed as a meeting format because the purpose of this is really to be able to take a deep dive into this topic, to address any questions that you all have about the food nutrition programs, especially those that are offered through schools. I know school's going to be starting not too long from now, and it's a good time to start thinking about revisiting the nutrition programs through the schools. So we want to be able to tap into some of your experiences also, and then give you plenty of time to ask questions as well. On this topic. So we'll have Erin kick off with a brief presentation, and we really just want to spend the rest of our time here just having a chat, and hope that we can be helpful for all of you and share this expertise today. So thanks for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over now to Erin.
Thanks, Melissa. And hi, everyone. As Melissa said, I'm Erin Kennedy Hysom, and I work really on school meals, school breakfast, school lunch, and then a program called the Community Eligibility Provision, which I will explain. So I'm really excited to talk with you all today. I am very informal. I do have slides, but let's have this be a conversation. So if at any point you have questions or would like me to slow down or explain something, please just unmute, jump out, drop it in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat as we go through this. Next slide, please. I know a bunch of my colleagues have presented to you guys before about various programs, but if anyone is new, the Food Research and Action Center is a national nonprofit, and we work to end poverty-related hunger here in the United States through training, technical assistance, research, and advocacy at the state, local, and federal levels, and we work across all federal nutrition programs. Next slide, please. Today, we are going to talk about the federal child nutrition programs. Next slide. There are quite a few federal child nutrition programs. The ones that mostly serve school-age children are the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program, and that is what I'm going to focus on today as we gear up for back to school time, really looking at what these programs are, who do they serve, what are their benefits, and how can we connect grandparents, kinship family members to make sure that their children have access to these programs and that their students are nourished throughout the school day. But there's also a variety of other school-age child nutrition programs, summer nutrition programs, after-school programs, and summer EBT. And I know that in partnerships with Generations United, we've developed a number of resources we'll be happy to direct you to if you haven't seen them already. Next slide, please. So when we talk about school-age child nutrition programs, the National School Lunch Program is the biggest one. It's the most popular. We have around 30 million children participate in school lunch every single day. Over 90,000 schools participate in the National School Lunch Program. And it's second only to SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, when we think about federal nutrition assistance programs. The school lunch program is open to all children. School lunch is for everybody. not just children who qualify for free or reduced price meals, but any child that attends a school that operates National School Lunch Program can participate. But we're going to talk about the eligibility for various benefits, with whether a child can get a free school meal, whether they can get one at a reduced price, or whether they have to pay the full price, and some differences that you might be seeing, particularly now across the country, as a number of states have adopted state policies that allow all schools to serve all children free school meals. Next slide, please. School breakfast program, as what you imagine it would be, it's the breakfast program. And there's a variety of different ways that schools are implementing the school breakfast program. What we call the traditional model is when schools offer breakfast to students before the start of the school day. So it would require children to get to school early to participate. At FRAC, we do a lot of work with schools and with states and with partners and advocates to flip that model. Instead of serving breakfast before the start of the school day, we are really working with schools to encourage them to incorporate school breakfast into the regular school day. What that looks like, varies based on each individual school, but it means that children arrive at school, and then as they're in homeroom or first period, while teachers are collecting attendance, doing attendance or collecting homework, that they're able to eat breakfast in their classroom in community with their peers. We know that getting to school on time, at least in my household, is very challenging. Getting to school early doesn't happen. And it really is a disservice to the student and their family when we require students to get to school before buses, before they're able to, in order to participate in breakfast. So the school breakfast program is available in the majority of schools that serve the lunch program. There are still some schools that only serve lunch, but the overwhelming majority of schools that operate the National School Lunch Program also operate the school breakfast program. And just like school lunch, there are federal nutrition standards that are based on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans that dictate what can be served in school meals. And I'll get into that in a few slides, because I know that's a big question that often comes up about the healthfulness or the nutritional quality of the meals being served through the breakfast and lunch programs. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview. I always laugh at this slide because it reminds me of that Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill, but this is how the programs work, like most of our federal programs. Congress authorizes the money, right? Congress passes the laws, and they say, this is how much money we are going to have to operate these programs, and here is the law on which is going to guide these programs. And then USDA, the Department of Agriculture, writes the regulations. So they take that law and they say, okay, here is the guidance and the regulation that schools must follow so that they're meeting the law. And this is a little unique in a school system because pretty much everyone else in the school system, their chain of command goes up to the Department of Education, but School Food Services is unique because we go up through the Department of Agriculture. And so oftentimes this can create a little bit of confusion within the individual school. Ideally, your school nutrition department is supposed to be self-sustaining, meaning that they don't pull money from the general fund. They have their own budget. And so that can really influence some decisions. And so when you have various grandparents or family members saying, well, how come, my one student at this school has access to free meals and my other student at this school doesn't? Or how come when I switched school districts, this school was offering free meals, but this school district wasn't? A lot of those decisions have to come down to whether or not the school nutrition department can financially afford to do those additional programs. Then it goes down to a state agency. In all states, besides 4, it's the Department of Education that oversees school meals, but there are 4 states where it's the Department of Agriculture that oversees school meals. And then it goes down to that local school district. And that local school district is responsible for the menu itself, what foods are going to serve. So Congress says school meals must meet dietary guidelines for Americans. USDA says, okay, that means it can only have this much sodium and this much added sugar. And then the local school district says, okay, well, we're going to serve this bread or this pizza or this sandwich. So the actual menu of the foods that are being served is a school district decision. And then, of course, we also have state legislature that can come in and influence, what is being served in a school or how a school might operate as well. Next slide, please. Really, school meals support the student. We know from just personal experience and decades of research that children cannot learn on an empty stomach. And therefore, access to healthy, nutritious school meals supports the classroom and student achievement, and it supports the family as well. And we'll get into some of these benefits in the next few slides. So research shows us that participating in school meal programs reduces childhood food insecurity, but it also reduces household food insecurity. When a school offers all children free school meals, whether through a program called community eligibility or because of state policy that's allowing them to do that, household food security rises. So household hunger decreases because that household is able to stretch their dollars, their household budget, to cover other areas and expenses. They know they can send their child to school and that student will have access to a nutritious breakfast and lunch. Then they don't have to worry about where they're going to make up those dollars to cover those costs. We also know from research that participating in school meals supports student health and long-term health outcomes and also academic achievement. So there's a lot of research, and on the next slide, we'll go specifically into breakfast research, the school breakfast program, that shows that students that attend schools that have robust breakfast programs, where they bring breakfast into the classroom, they're more likely to show up to school. Chronic absenteeism is reduced. They're more likely to have better classroom behavior. And this in turn turns out to have better test scores. So looking specifically at school breakfast, and we highlight school breakfast at FRAC because there is a gap. There is a pretty significant gap between children who are eating school lunch and children who are eating school breakfast. And so we're looking to close that gap, particularly among children who qualify for free and reduced price meals, with the thought being that if a student qualifies for free and reduced price meals and they're participating in school lunch, there is clearly a need there. And that need probably also transcribes across to the breakfast meal as well. So when we look at the research, and there's been a lot of research around breakfast, they really show that school breakfast supports student health and learning. Children who consume school breakfast have better dietary intake. They have less risk of hunger and food insecurity. They have lower rates of obesity and then chronic health conditions. And then, as I mentioned, better attendance, better behavior, better math scores, better reading scores. They visit the nurse less often. And we've talked to teachers, we talked to a lot of teachers, and something that I often think about is a teacher once said to us, it just takes one hungry child to disrupt a whole classroom. So when we give all children access to healthy school meals, we are helping the entire classroom, right? Everyone benefits from a well-nourished society, and that is especially true inside a classroom. Next slide, please. I won't ask anybody how old they are or if they participated in school meals when they were younger, but I will share that school meals today are significantly different than the school meals that I received when I was in elementary and high school. Over the last 16 years, there have been tremendous improvements in the nutritional quality of school meals. In fact, the research shows that school lunch is the healthiest source of food for children across the United States. That children who participate in the school lunch program have a better diet quality than their peers who don't participate. And this is even greater, the magnitude of that is even greater if the child is from a household with a low income, that nutritional benefit of the lunch program provides even more better diet quality than a peer who's not participating. I am a dietitian, and so what we like to say is, to get real fancy, is that children who eat school lunch have higher intakes of micronutrients of public health concern, which means they have higher intakes of vitamin D, calcium, better fiber, which the majority of Americans are not eating enough of. And that's really determined by the fact that school meals are based on the dietary guidelines for Americans. There is regulation that school meals must strive to meet the dietary guidelines for Americans. So every few years, as the DGAs are updated, we get subsequent new nutrition standards for school breakfast and school lunch. So right now, some of the new standards that are being phased in is limits on added sugar, right? There was a recognition that there was too much added sugar in the school breakfast program in particular. So now schools are reducing the amount of added sugar. Well, as I'm sure many of you know, we had new dietary guidelines released earlier this calendar year. And so we do anticipate new regulations coming out in the fall that's going to address protein at breakfast and look at some other areas so that we continue to align with those dietary guidelines and those best nutrition practices. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, school meals support households. So I have three children. Two of them are school age in kindergarten and first grade, or now they're telling me they're rising first graders, rising second graders. So first and second grade. Thankfully, my school district does breakfast in the classroom. So my children eat school breakfast and lunch every single day in school. Over the summer, they attend camps. And I can't tell you how stressful it is to just figure out how to pack a lunch for them. But if you calculate the time, if you're just doing 10 minutes a day for packing lunch, that's up to 30 hours each school year. And, mornings are crazy. Households can be crazy, particularly when you have various ages going in various directions out the door. It really is a time saver that takes some stress off caregivers. It also saves money, particularly if a student qualifies for free breakfast and lunch. It could save the household over $1,000 a year. And I'm sure everyone has gone to the grocery store lately and they know the price of food. For most school lunches, even if you have to pay, you are paying $3 for the lunch, around $3 on average. And that's for a complete meal. So that's for a fluid milk, that's for a serving of protein, servings of whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. And there's not many things that you can get for $3 to $4 anymore that has all of that nutrition in it. Also, really exciting thing that I always like to focus on too is that school meals really expose children to a variety of different foods that they not always see in their own households. I worked in Baltimore City for a number of years, and a colleague of mine was sharing she was in the grocery store, and the child was with his grandmother and said, "Grandma, can we get this?" And the grandmother said, "What is that?" And he said, "It's a kiwi. I have it in school lunch." And so it's really this like intergenerational learning that occurs when schools really embrace things like farm to school and start offering a variety of different fruits and vegetables. And they are really now working towards offering more culturally relevant foods and really engaging students and their caregivers on what are you eating at home and what would you like to see in the school lunch line. It is challenging. The margins of what they receive to make a meal and what they're able to spend on food costs are very, very, very low. But they are working tirelessly to really embed different cultural cuisines into their lunch program because school nutrition directors know that this program is for their whole community. They really are embedded in serving the child and the whole household. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know that in some discussions, we will have some caregivers say, well, my child gets free school, everyone just gets free school meals. So let's talk about why there might be some differences between how the schools operate these programs and how states operate these programs. Next slide, please. So as of last school year, 2025, 2026, there were 9 states across the nation, and you see them here in green that have passed state policy that offers all children school meals at no charge, meaning that in the traditional model, and I'll get into that, a student is determined eligible for free or reduced price meals based on their household income. In these 9 states, you can see California, Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Michigan, New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine. In these 9 states, they have decided to use state funds in addition to federal funding to ensure that all students can have access to free school meals. The states in blue, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Delaware, as well as DC, they also have free breakfast. So they haven't done free lunch yet, but they have passed free breakfast policies. So those states any child, regardless of the individual household income, has access to free breakfast. The states in yellow, which are the majority of the remaining states, are working towards healthy school meals for all. They're working towards that universal free school meals policy, meaning they've formed coalitions, they've introduced legislation, and they're really advocating at their state level to bring that free meal reality to students in all of their schools. Next slide, please. In addition to state policy, there is a federal program called community eligibility. It gets really, really wonky on how community eligibility functions because, like all federal programs, it's clear as mud as to how to qualify. But essentially, your high need or your high poverty schools may be able to participate in community eligibility, or what we call CEP. And this allows every child in the school to have access to free school meals. So it's a universal free school meals program for that specific school or that school district. Next slide, please. Community eligibility became a program or a provision in the 2014-2015 school year. And as of last school year, we had over 55,000 schools adopting across the country, and that's more than half of the schools. So there are schools in every single state that are using community eligibility to offer free school meals to all of their students. Next slide, please. And now we're going to talk about the traditional model. Next slide. So again, we have state policies. In these states, all children can have access to free school meals if they've passed those policies. Next slide, please. We have community eligibility. So in those specific schools, the child can have access to free school meals, but that is a school district decision. And I'm going to show you a resource. Next slide. It's here. Yes, right here. So we have a database online. If you're interested in seeing whether or not the school that individuals you're working with attends could participate in CEP or whether they are participating, you can go to this database on our website, look up the state, look up the school district, and it'll tell you either yes, they are participating or no, they're not participating. And that way you can help work with your caregivers to determine, do they need to fill out a school meal application or does the school already offer free school meals? Next slide, please. There is something called identified students. So before we get into the actual application, children who receive SNAP, TANF, or FDPIR, Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, are automatically eligible for free school meals without having to submit an application. In 44 states, children who receive Medicaid, not Medicare, children who receive Medicaid or someone in their household receives Medicaid and their household income is below the federal thresholds, they can also automatically get free school meals without submitting an application. There are still 6 states in DC that don't use Medicaid data to qualify children for free school meals. Next slide, please. There's also categorically eligible children. These are children who are identified as eligible for a free school meal without having to submit an application. So they are children who are homeless or unaccompanied youth, runaway, migrant, if they're participating in Head Start or if they're in foster care. So these children also are automatically eligible. So if you are working with a grandparent or if you're working with a caregiver and one of their students might fall into one of these categories and they're not getting free school meals, we should reach out to the school food service department. And I'll kind of show you that in a few more slides. Contact the school food service department and make sure that they are aware that this child is an unaccompanied youth and therefore they can access free school meals without having to submit the application. Next slide. And then in the traditional model, which I will say now it's less than 50% of schools do this, but it is very cumbersome, time consuming. And to be honest, the application itself can be very, very confusing to fill out. But in your traditional school meals model, children are determined eligible for free or reduced price meals based on the household income. The tricky part is that oftentimes households don't have this like nice, neat annual income. They might be piecemealing incomes together from a variety of benefits. And so they try to USDA releases this chart that shows, well, if you make this on an average for a week or every 2 weeks or monthly, and this is your household size, then you might qualify for free meals. And there's also another chart for reduced price meals. But for example, a family of 3 would have to make less than $34,645 annually to qualify for free meals. It's pretty low. Next slide, please. So when a grandparent, when a relative, a caregiver is filling out an application, this is the high level information that they need. This slide makes it seem pretty easy, but if you pull up a school meal application itself, it's a lot of very small print on back and front of an application, and they ask for a lot of different income sources. But primarily, you need to know everyone that lives in your household. And when we say household, I mean like an economic unit. So if you are in a household and you have a grandparent, and maybe you have a grandchild, and you have an uncle in the household, if they're all kind of sharing the economics of the household, that's considered a household unit. So all of those individuals would need to be listed on the application. Now, if you have that same unit, and let's say they rent out the basement to renters, and those renters have their own finances and it's not commingled, the renters would not be considered an economic unit. And this does get complicated, so I'm going to keep saying, reach out to the school food service department. They can help guide you through this. And in fact, many school food service departments do things like forms nights, back to school nights, where they help families complete these applications. You need to know the amount and source of income for each household member, including the child, if the child has any kind of income. An adult in the household has to sign the application, and then that adult should provide the last 4 digits of their social security number. Or if they don't have a social security number, they must check a box or indicate on the form that there is no social security number. The adult does not need to have a social security number in order for the child to get these benefits. But I understand that given current economic or immigration policies, that alone can be a barrier to someone filling out these applications. Next slide, please. Some key things about income. It's gross income, so it's not net income, so it's before taxes. They're going to ask you your earnings from work, from public assistance, from retirement, and they're going to ask for the child income. So on the next slide, I actually have a screenshot of USDA's prototype application, and it gets pretty small. Can you advance, please? Thank you. But I put this on here because I don't think people really understand the extent of what we're calling income. So obviously any kind of salary or wages, but if you have a family that's in the military, housing allowance needs to be included. If you have someone who is receiving a pension, then that pension or disability benefits must be included. If you have a child who is getting Social Security benefits, that Social Security benefits has to be included. If you have a child who says is working a part-time job, their part-time job income has to be included. So these forms can get very, very complicated. And families that are trying to piecemeal together various income sources just to make ends meet, this can become very overwhelming for them at times. That's why at FRAC, we really are pushing for healthy school meals for all across the nation, meaning that every child in every school has access to breakfast and lunch so that they're able to thrive in their classrooms. Next slide, please. So just a few resources. Very quickly, I'll share our website at FRAC if you want to do a deeper dive. It's frac.org, and we have various program pages on school breakfast program, on the school lunch program, and then on the community eligibility provision. Next slide. And I'm always happy and willing to talk with everybody, but I would say your first line of defense, your first call should be to that school district's Food and Nutrition Services Department. They can help you with the nuances of, an application and who's qualifying for free meals. If you did submit an application, or if a family did submit an application and then they were denied benefits and they think that that could be an error, they can help you reapply, because you can reapply at any point in the year, even if income changes. The tricky thing sometimes is figuring out who that contact is. So if you go to a school district's website, it might be called school meals, it might be called school nutrition, it might be called a division of food and nutrition or child nutrition services. But generally, if I go to the school district website and I go to the search bar and I just put lunch, school lunch, you'll find the right web page that comes right up. Next slide, please. And that is pretty a high level overview of the program. So I wanted to open it up to see if anyone had questions, and if not, I can kind of throw some questions out to you. I will start off and say, I know sometimes we get questions about children who move around from schools to schools as they are changing households. So a school meal application, or whether the child has been determined eligible for free school meals because they participate in SNAP, let's say. If the child is staying within the same school district, that eligibility should stay with them throughout the different schools within a district. If they are moving to another school district, they will need to resubmit an application or go through the process again for that school district. At this point, it's really only on a school district level that eligibility data is retained. But I know that often happens as children move around too. So, but once they do apply, and once the student has been determined eligible for free or reduced price meals, that stays with them throughout the entire school year. So they don't need to reapply at any point throughout the school year, but at the beginning of the next school year, they will need to reapply. Anyone have any questions, comments for me?
I'll kick off. I'm sorry if you address this, but what about charter schools and private schools?
So charter schools and private schools can participate if they're not for profit in the National School Lunch Program. And we do have a number of, there's parochial schools, charter schools, public charter schools that participate. But it's going to be a school decision on them. If they are a for-profit entity, then they can't participate in the National School Lunch Program, but your not-for-profit ones can participate in the program. And many, many do.
Great, thank you. I have one more question, and then just see if anybody else has any questions. But you provided a lot of really great advocacy tips, like why these school programs are really important to children and families. And I'm just wondering, is there like a target for this group to think about if you're going to go advocate for more funding or something specific? Like, what are some focuses for advocacy?
Well, I think definitely bringing the grandparent, the kinship caregiver voice is so important, right? I think that voice is so meaningful and impactful, and sometimes our policymakers are doing so much that they don't always think about who these programs are always serving, and they don't realize the breadth of community that these programs really serve. I think that if you're interested in really doing, let's say, state level advocacy, you can connect with us at FRAC, and we'll be happy to connect you with anti-hunger advocates in your state. And we really have a finger on the pulse of, which state is about to pass healthy school meals for all. Like North Dakota, for example, is about to go to the ballot in November to try to pass universal free school meals on their state level, right? And so I think as we collect those voices, we can connect you with that network. On the federal level, we would always love to engage anybody who could kind of share their story, because right now we're in an affordability crisis. And I think that our policymakers need to understand like the variety of households that are feeling this pinch and what these programs mean. And so what I would kind of ask back to the group is, are you hearing from families worries about losing, say, SNAP? Are you hearing from families about worries about, the rising food prices and not being able to feed everybody? Because what we also know is that if a child shows up to school hungry, everyone else in their household is probably hungry too, right? Because we know caregivers, parents, grandparents, older siblings, they're going to let the youngest sibling eat first before everybody else eats. So whatever you are hearing from your partners and your network that we could then bring up to the policymakers we work with, I think would be exceptionally beneficial.
So does anybody have anything they want to share with Erin about this in terms of concerns you've heard or that you have as a caregiver? You can unmute yourself or put something in the chat. Thanks, Susan. The question's also in the chat. Feel free to share anything that you have.
And I will say, I'll reiterate, school meals are, like I said, for every child, every student. Immigration status does not affect whether or not a child could receive a free or reduced price school meal. But that being said, we are hearing obvious concerns, particularly from mixed status households where they might not be filling out an application this year. They might not be applying for a SNAP benefit this year because of overarching immigration concerns. And so if that is something that you're also hearing, please let us know. And that is, another reason of the plethora of reasons why we continue to just push for healthy school meals for all or universal access, right? It is our belief that children are in school all day long and they need access to nutrition to succeed in school. We need to make it easy and accessible for them to have that.
I was also wondering whether any of the Kinship Navigator programs are helping these families complete these applications. I know that they do help with a lot of different applications as being caregivers. And I know you said that schools have those school nights and things, but I wonder if there's any Kinship Navigators here who are actually providing assistance with that at their offices. And I do think that they make the application process difficult.
A lot. It's a lot. I worked at a school district once and we had a base on school, and I couldn't tell you how many like younger new families would be denied benefits because they forgot to put in like the housing allowance or something like that. And it's just heartbreaking. I would say if you're not helping out about the school meals applications, but you're interested in doing that, I would say the school nutrition department is a good place to start, and also any PTA, PTO organizations maybe within the school system can kind of help set things up to walk you through that process. What about snacks? Yes, snack time. So there is a federal during the school day snack program that's called the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, which is fantastic. It's for elementary schools. They offer fresh produce snacks during the school day. In order for the school to qualify for that, it has to be of the highest poverty within the school system. Then there's after school snack programs that if a child is engaged in like an enrichment activity or after school club or sports team, that they can run federal programs. Those are the federal snack programs. But then a number of schools that say don't qualify for federal snack programs, they will kind of self fund their own not federal snack program. And schools do a lot of other things too, like weekend backpack programs that are great. We are trying to work with schools to maximize their federal resources because, like everybody else, schools don't have big budgets. So there's some federal snack programs out there. Not every school will qualify. There's a bunch of federal regulations around them. And then there's some other schools that just do their own kind of snack programs, but it varies based on the individual school and the resources that they have.
Everybody's very quiet today. Well, Erin, if you
Erin,
wouldn't
if
mind
you
me, oh, I don't know, I don't know why I'm echoing, sorry. Erin, if you wouldn't mind just putting your email in the chat, that way if anybody has any questions, oh, thank you, perfect. That way if you have any questions that come to mind later, or you're just too shy today to ask them, please feel free to reach out to Erin. We want to make sure that your programs have all the information they need to help families get access to food and nutrition programs, especially in the schools, which can become, pretty bureaucratic just to try to get all that information from the school system. So let us know how we can assist on that front. And what I want to do also is just let everybody know that we have another office hour sessions with our partners at FRAC, and that is going to be on August 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern, same time now, and that is going to be specifically focused on WIC and I need to look this up, the Child and Adult Care Food Program. So please join us for that session. I think my colleague put something in the chat on that front. And if you can just sign up for that in advance, that way you'll get the login information. And thank you so much, Erin, for joining us today. This was jam-packed of really great information. I learned a lot, and I'm sure others did as well. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.